So what makes us live? What keeps us going through even some of the most painful times of our lives? And at what point do we make the decision that maybe it's not worth it anymore and decide that it might be better to end this life? This is a topic that is often covered in many stories. However, unlike a lot of other stories that covers this topic in a much more dark and grim manner, in Girls' Last Tour, since it is a much more hopeful series, it takes a much more optimistic attitude with regards to this particular question. And with Chi and Yu, considering the fact that they are going through this survival sort of situation, it becomes a very important question for them to answer. So what's up, people, and welcome to the part 3 discussion for Girls' Last Tour. And for this discussion, we do want to talk about exactly the purpose of life. For that is the question that Chi brings up right at the very beginning of the story. And of course, Yu responds appropriately in her characteristic way by bonking Chi in the head. And when Chi asks, "Why the heck did you do that?" Yu just says, "Oh, I thought you were going crazy," after asking a bunch of questions like that. But it is, of course, pertinent, especially to Chi, because of the fact that, yes, she starts wondering every once in a while, is it worth it? I mean, you're going on a daily basis, scrounging for as little food that you can find, and the small amount of fuel that takes you to the next few days to do the same thing over and over. You start asking, what's the point? What's the purpose in life? And this, of course, creates a foreshadowing of what may come out in the future for this episode. And it leaves the viewers with a sense of worry for these two characters. Now, just like with episode 1 and episode 2, episode 3 starts out with a kind of a tense sort of situation, for this is the first time that the two girls encounter somebody else during their journeys. A gentleman named Kanazawa cross their paths. And of course, in the beginning, the girls are quite tense, not knowing what the intentions of this gentleman are. But of course, this is Girls' Last Tour, so it turns out that Kanazawa is a relatively decent gentleman. And it turns out that he is doing cartography, taking care to map out the areas that he is exploring. And since Chi is very interested in the world around her and of the world of the past, as well as trying to figure out what is going on in the current world, where, for example, that fish came from, and noticing that there is this other higher level of the city, then this gentleman Kanazawa turns out to be very useful, because while they are traveling, Kanazawa gives what he's learned about the civilization to Chi and Yu. And of course, while we are traveling with them, we start learning about the world as well. And this is probably the first episode where we really start understanding the mysteries of the world. For there seems to be several layers of civilizations, one on top of the other. And the question is of course, what sort of civilization are in the higher levels? From what Kanazawa says, these higher levels were made in an era that's way before their own. And so during the people who have lived currently on the surface of the planet, there is not really that much information or understanding of what is going on at the higher levels because of the fact that those were created much earlier than their existence. And so people just take it as another level higher. But of course, this creates the interest to both Chi and Kanazawa in understanding what those higher level civilizations are. Is there any life on those higher levels? Could there be existing civilization that still is alive in the upper levels? And of course, this then stirs the interest of these three people to want to explore the upper levels. Now, also at this time, during the conversations, we start learning a little bit more about Kanazawa. He has been alone for quite a while, and to avoid going crazy, he started doing his cartography, and he has mapped a significant amount of the area on the surface. And it is because of these maps that, of course, the girls find a way of getting to one of the towers or the pillars that can get them to the higher levels. And it is during this conversation that we hear a curious thing, which is, of course, that now Kanazawa takes his cartography extremely seriously because it has become his life's purpose. Without that, of course, he would not know exactly what to do in this desolate world. And so, of course, he says to you that, his maps are his life. And if he were ever to lose them, he may consider forfeiting his life because he loses the purpose of living. And this, combined with the first statement that Chi made regarding the purpose of life, further enhances the foreshadowing of what may come up later. And sure enough, when we get to the point later on in the story, when they do find a way of going up in this derelict elevator, and they take themselves and the Kettenkrad up to the higher levels, that derelict elevator starts breaking down. And of course, the gentleman loses grip of his maps. And yes, what we were all dreading regarding the foreshadowing occurs with that one character, which of course is expendable, and he goes after the maps and jumps right out of the elevator. But this is Girls' last tour, and so unlike a lot of other series where they would end it with that scene, the girls do somehow catch him, and despite his arguments that he has lost his purpose and they should just let go, both you and she say, "No way," and pull him back. Now, he has lost his maps by this time, and somehow they do get to the top of the first level. And the gentleman is now almost like a zombie, not knowing or even caring whether he wants to move forward with his life. And it's at this point that for the first time in the series, we see the value of you. Because it's you who finally sits down next to him and starts telling him that you may have lost what you had as a purpose in life, but that doesn't mean that a future purpose will not be created later. And for all you know, something good may actually come out. And it is around that time that they do see the night lights of the upper level start automatically turning on, and they are greeted with a beautiful scenery. And we are also shocked to see you do one of the most uncharacteristic things in the series, which is to give Kanazawa her rations of the cookies. And Kanazawa, not knowing what to do, decides to take that and eat the cookies, and he's like, wow, these are very good. And Yu goes, you see, if you wait long enough, something good does happen. And I think that was enough for Kanazawa to understand. Yes, he may have lost the maps that he was making in the surface, but he has a whole new area to map. And so he decides to go out and go his separate ways from the girls and start mapping out the upper levels. Now, before he leaves, he gives a thanks to Yu for the rations, and I think the advice, and gives the girls his camera, hoping that maybe they could use it for their journeys in the future. Now, one thing that they notice while they are up in the upper levels is that there is one extremely bright spot further on down the road. And so the girls decide that they will go in that direction for their journey. And so this is yet again a very unique way of taking a very popular question and problem and portraying it in a way that only Girls' Last Tour can. Now, there is one last epilogue that comes out later that Kanazawa is now walking down and he's like, wow, it's sure gonna be a long journey in this direction. And I just hope that that epilogue wasn't put in there as a grim foreshadowing of something that may come out in the future, but we will only know if we continue on down this journey. And so I will continue to watch Girls' Last Tour and upload the videos as I watch them, and I hope you join me in my future episodes. And let's see what good things come out in the future according to the advice by you. Okay, so that's it for this episode, and thank you very much for watching. And until the next episode of Girls' Last Tour, happy exploring, happy living, and of course, Jaya, nice day, everyone.